want to talk about Spider Noir. Got a chance to finish it this past weekend. Uh, I enjoyed it. Overall, I thought it was good. You know, I could see myself watching it again at some point. Like, it was enjoyable. There was uh, some DEI issues, how we say, some woke stuff more towards the end. But overall, I enjoyed it. Like I said, positives. I really love Nick Cage's performance. Ben Riley, he was awesome. Like, the accent he's using feels so perfect for the setting and the type of movie they're trying to make. His mannerisms are, you know, he's Nick Cage. He's got, the way he is just awesome. Like, his style of acting and everything. But then as the series progresses, you see him making these bizarre, like, strange movements. The first time you see it, like, it's after a big fight. I thought he was stretching or something. Like, I was like, is he actually doing Tai Chi? Like, he makes a joke earlier in the series about how he does Tai Chi. He like tries to web some guys and it doesn't work. We find out later that it's because he had been drinking. I'll get to that. But so you see him doing these bizarre movements, and it looks like he's stretching. And then as you progress through the story, he starts talking about how, well, a spider actually doesn't have muscles in a skeletal system like human. It moves through fluid sacs, or basically a hydraulic system, by emptying and filling these sacs. It allows it to move around. And once you see that, and once he says that, you see that, oh, that's the movements he's making. It's like the spider in him is trying to take over. And it's really cool the way they do it, because the first time you see it, like I said, it's what the hell is he doing? What's going on here? And then as the story progresses, you say, oh, that's what's going on. In those moments where he's totally relaxed, the spider kind of takes over and kicks in. It's really cool the way they do it, and the way they break it down. You know, and then, like, his character is awesome. Like, he's beaten down. The woman he loves has been dead for 5 years at this point. But, like, no matter how much he says he's done, he's a coward. All this, his actions don't show that. He's not giving up. He's not done being the hero, even if he says he wants to be. And then the show gives him a chance to show that off, which is good. The Spider, as they call it, because they don't call him, for whatever reason, they don't call him Spider Man. They simply call him the Spider. Uh, the costume is amazing. Like, I want them to do more, simply just so I can see more of the Spider. Like, he looks so good in that costume. The hat, the coat, and, like, I watched the whole thing in black and white. It was a bit of an ordeal to get it started, because for whatever reason my Fire Stick, that's only a few months old, wouldn't give me the option. I had to cast it off my phone, and it was a whole ordeal. But it eventually, once we got it working, black and white is the way to watch the show, and it looks so good, especially when he's in costume. It's perfect. It was designed for that. The costume, the shots, everything. It's so good. And then other things I really liked. Robbie was good. I liked the actor who played him. The character was good. I didn't feel like he was being preachy at any point throughout the show. Like, I felt like he was played well. There wasn't a lot of woke stuff. Like, there were moments where they showed, like, racist things that were happening to him, but they were appropriate for the time. It was 1933. There was going to be whites only places. There's going to be places where black men aren't allowed. There's a moment, and I think it's towards the end of the series, where he works his way back into the Bugle, and he gets a desk, and you can see the other people in the bullpen looking at him kind of crazy. And that's what would happen in 1933 if a black man were to all of a sudden show up, sit at a desk, and declare that he worked there. Like, that's exactly what would happen. So I didn't mind that. He has a little bit of a retard moment uh, later on in the show, and I'll get to that. That's one of the issues I have with it. But to finish out the positives, the villains, I really enjoyed the villains. White Mane, I thought was good. Uh, he runs into the usual problem of an unpowered villain who starts recruiting semi-intelligent powered villains. Obviously, sooner or later they're going to stop listening to him, and that's exactly what happens. But I liked them. Sandman was good. Electro, I really liked Electro. He had a he had a weird gay moment. It is what it is. He kisses a man and chooses that as his method of killing him, which it was weird. It felt out of place, and the only thing that kind of saved it for me was that the show commented on it as well. The show actually was, White Man, as soon as it's over, he just looks around like, That was weird. It's like, okay, you saw that too. So like, it's one of those things. It's like if we all thought it was weird, I don't know why you put it in there, but at least you were self-aware enough to comment on it and agree. So that's why I found it okay. And his character after that, he was really good. He was crazy. He was definitely unhinged, but he was fun. He was quoting all kinds of I think they were plays, or I'm not the culture type. So, but like, I liked his character. I swear I've seen him in something before, and I couldn't remember. I meant to look it up. I just forgot. But I liked his character. He was really good. Uh, but there were some negatives. There were some negatives. Um, the biggest being the DEI issues. We start out the first being the assistant, and I looked into this on Grok, and I think it said that in 1933 Hispanics were like 2% of the population in New York, and then in 1933 it's the depression and the people are broke and starving and all that. So like the odds of him having a fat Latin assistant in 1933 New York is less than 1%. Like literally, it's less than 1% of the population is going to match that, and somehow he found it and decided to hire her. And it's like it was unnecessary. And then as the series progresses, she starts speaking Spanish randomly and stuff like that, and it's like it was unnecessary. It was total unnecessary. Trying to pander to the brown folks. I'm one of them, by the way, so I can say that shit. Trying to pander to the brown folks. And it's like you just didn't need to do that. And then by the end of the series, you have Ben saying to his assistant that she's a better detective than him anyway, which that hasn't been the case throughout the series. He's never been shown to be inept. And the truth is, she hasn't been shown to be any kind of special. The closest thing to detective work I remember her doing is bribing a cop with a sandwich to get a file. It's like I'll grant you that I guess that is detective work, but is that more impressive than you climbing up? I don't know, was it 15 stories of a fire escape to take pictures of someone? I don't know. So that was a problem with her. Cat, uh, Cat Hardy, Felicia Hardy. Um, she was fine. She was attractive. Like again, if you're gonna race swap who is supposed to be the attractive love interest of the story, make sure they're attractive. Take notes, Nolan. But like she was kind of flat in her delivery. She didn't have a lot of emotion in a lot of scenes. Some scenes it came through, but overall it was whatever. Um, and then at the end, she's the one who ends up killing Silvermane, and it's like I'm I only watched it the once, but I'm fairly certain that Silvermane was the one that was responsible for Ben's wife being killed. So it's like that should have been his kill. She should have been like cheering on Sandman when he was fighting Electro. Like that fight should have gone differently. She should have been like the the catalyst that makes him realize that he can win. Maybe change the setting a bit, put him at like Coney Island so there's plenty of sand around, and that he can use that to work Electro. Maybe he throws him into the ocean or something, and then you can bring Electro back for another season instead of having him get hit by a fucking train. But you know, instead they have her go through some weird mirror, enter the dragon mirror hallway where she starts breaking all the mirrors, and eventually she kills Silvermane in a very anticlimactic and lame way, and it was just it, I didn't like it. That I feel like that should have been Ben's kill. You know, she should have been there with Sandman, helping him. Cheering him on, and being that inspiration to push him to defeat Electro. That's what I think should have happened. And then Tombstone is has the most like blatantly like the biggest like obvious moment for me of just like the woke DEI nonsense that's in the show. There's two moments that are actually belong to him. Early on, I think it's in the fifth episode. He gives a little speech about how he never did anything for a white man, and white man kept him down. The usual stuff that they say. And honestly, as soon as he started, I checked out. I don't even know how Sandman convinced him to come work for Silvermane, but he did. It's like, oh, I guess you will work for a white man, actually, if the right things are said to you to get you to whatever. And then he goes to work for a white man and proceeds to commit a series of crimes, you know, theft and breaking and entering. And I don't remember if he directly killed anyone during the series, but what happened to the doctor and her son, everyone who was there is getting charged with murder. Like everyone who was there. He's the one who broke down the door. He's the one who let them in. If he doesn't do that, those people are still alive. So, yes, he is responsible for their murder. Despite this, once he is cured, which also happens kind of in a. It's not how it happens, but the lead up to it is stupid, and I'll get to that. But once he is cured, then immediately the cops go to try to arrest him, and they probably were going to hurt him. But I mean, they've been kind of being shitty to the cops beforehand. He had beaten up quite a few of them using his superpowers. And, again, that's another thing, whether you like how the cops acted when they were breaking up the Hooverville, it's still resisting arrest and assaulting an officer. So that's another charge that he has. But once he's cured, all of a sudden the cops go to arrest him, and Spider-Man decides that he no longer cares about law and order. He no longer cares about helping the police arrest the bad guys. He straight up attacks, I don't know, 5 or 6 cops, takes them off of Tombstone, and then they're allowed to escape with Robbie's help. And it's like, it stuck out like a sore thumb to me. Like I just like really? Like we're just gonna straight up ignore all the laws he broke. We're gonna ignore the fact that the doctor and her son are dead because of him. It's like not directly, but like again, no one else that was there was strong enough to tear that door down. Maybe Sandman could have, but it's not clear. Like Electro, what's it gonna do? Just fucking electrify the thing? Like it wasn't gonna happen. They would have gotten out of there before anyone else could have gotten in, as if it wasn't for Tombstone. So the fact that he gets away, and he gets away, it's because he's black. If that had been white Tombstone from the comics, if I remember correctly, I believe he's white. Long time, if I remember correctly. If he'd been white, he probably would have ended up dead, but definitely would have been at least arrested and charged for murder, along with plenty of other crimes. So that was the biggest standout moment of it. But then the other big, like, so there's 3 issues. There's DEI issues. Tombstone himself is a major issue. And then the other thing is the plot hinges on people behaving like retards in 3 separate moments. And there might be more, but there's 3 specific moments that sit out to me. So when Cat hears from Sandman that they needed the spider's DNA to get the cure, instead of going to Ben and explaining to him what the situation is and how him volunteering to help might cure Kane and provide a cure for Electro and Tombstone, instead of going and talking to him, she goes behind his back, goes straight to the doctor, and just immediately gives him up and gives up his secret. And that's retarded. Like, why would you not go and talk to him? Like, you've basically established that you love him. And, you have love for him, at least. And you're just going to go do that? That's, obviously it's wrong, but it's also like, if you went to him and you told him and he said no, fine. And that's what should have happened, but it's not. She just goes straight to them without even talking to him or running it by him. That's the first retard moment that the plot required. The second retard moment is the doctor's son then goes and talks to Ben and talks to him about how he's the spider, and Ben basically tells him that he's retired and that he's leaving the city and all this stuff. At no point does the son explain to him that he is the key to the antidote, and that, again, if he's willing to volunteer, that then they may be able to cure the son and the other 3 powered individuals that we have in the show. He never explains that. He never says that. And then after they have their conversation and they share a drink and they talk about some stuff, then he ends up like he drugs him. That's right. He drugs him and he ends up taking him to the lab. And it's like, again, Why didn't you tell him why you were there? You went there and had a conversation with him about him being the Spider and retiring and stuff. It's like, why didn't you just tell him you need him for the antidote? That your mother is capable of doing it. The science has changed. It has been at that point. I don't know. I want to say like 10 years at that point. At least over 5 years at that point. Science had moved on. Like at least give it a chance. But they don't do that. Again, they just knock him out and take him in. And it's like maybe he wouldn't have agreed. Again, second time he wouldn't have agreed. Maybe he would have. And like obviously the writers make all the decisions, but like you know, in the universe, like that character, if you plead the case properly, because he is sympathetic to people's issues, he wants to be the hero, no matter how much he says he doesn't. His actions clearly show otherwise. So he wants to, but no one's really giving him the chance. Like, at least in those moments, they're not giving him the chance. So, that's retard moment number two. And then retard moment number three comes when Robbie confronts Tombstone right before the fight with him. And he goes and talks to him and gives him one of those, like, it doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, maybe if you'd have walked up to him and told him that you had a cure right off the bat, maybe he would have been, more willing to listen to what you were saying. Maybe he would have like, oh, I can walk away. I can have a normal life. Like, even if he suspects that you're lying, he has nothing to lose by believing you. Even in the moment he goes with you, you're lying. He beats you up and leaves. He's still indestructible. He goes with you. You're not lying. You cure him, and he gets his life back. So like there was no reason for him to confront him the way he did, to say the things he did. All you had to do is come and be like, bro, we got a cure. Come on, let's go. Let's go. And like, but they needed to have a fight between Tombstone and Spider-Man. So the only way to facilitate that was for Robbie to act like a retard. And it's like, you do better. And like I say all that to say that I still enjoyed the show. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10. Like I said, I would consider watching it again. There is enough good in there. Like Nicolas Cage and the Spider, and even overall, like Robbie and the other villains are all good enough to outweigh the DEI and everything else. That I would say it's worth a watch. And me personally, I might even consider watching it a second time. Probably won't, to be perfectly honest. Probably won't. But there's things I watch, and it's like, yeah, I watched it, and I'll never watch it again. And then sometimes you watch something, you're like, yeah, I might give it a shot. We'll see. Sometimes you're sitting around bored, clicking through, and you're like, yeah, it was okay. And especially for like, there were some really great like cinematic moments especially with the black and white, that it just looked so good. And then there was and then the great scenes with Nick Cage and as the Spider and everything. Like there was great moments in it, and hopefully going forward, they'll take constructive criticism. They'll dial back on the DEI. If it seems like it's set up for a second season. It ended with a possibility for a second season, so we'll see how that goes. Uh, there was some more annoying stuff at the end, like at the very end. Instead of it being Ben Riley investigations, it was Ben Riley and Rui's investigations, and it's like that. Why would that? She's not a better detective than him. Like she gave it to the sandwich.